Anyone who knows something that's better or more easily available than the Scale Agile framework in portfolio management? There you go. It's like Botwatch. And open space, that's really cool. I'm going to run open space at XP in Switzerland in 25 for the first time ever. So if anybody has any good ideas of how to do that, I'd love to learn. That's a really cool thing. So, Cynefin is a sense-making framework. And some years ago, I did a lean portfolio management implementation just when the ones that we talked about came out. And one day I just got this idea of thinking, what would actually happen if you looked at this with the eyes of Cynefin? And what would happen if you took the lean portfolio management out to play with this complexity hacking thing called Cynefin? So that's what this is all about. And I'll explain more about it. So if you don't know, for example, what Cynefin is, or you've never heard about the Scale Agile framework, then we'll come to it. Just for the record, how many would say that they know about the Scale Agile framework?
All too well.
We're not going to admit it.
Okay. Is there anyone here who never heard about it? No, those days are coming, right? Okay, no, it's okay.
No, I put my hand up before. I've done all the training.
Okay.
It still doesn't make a lot of sense.
I'll caveat that with one thing.
Having done an MBA, there's an awful lot of business models in there that people that are used in the MBA, and they're sort of shoehorned in. But that's about it.
No, it's good. I'm not. That's not why I'm here. So I hope we're all on the same page on that one. Mm-hmm. Then about Cynefin, the thing developed by Dave Snowden and a few others. How many have heard about that? So most of you. Is there any one of you who have never heard about it? Like never. What is this?
Looks like a Welsh word.
So we'll spend a little bit of time on that. I've had fun with this for a number of years, and this just emerged from experience. So here's some questions and typical answers. If you speak with senior leaders about portfolio management, ask, is this important? They will say, yes, it's important. I never found anyone who disagreed with that. Then, can you be better at it? So, interestingly, nobody said, I'm as good as I can get. Right? It's a bit of a trick question. So they actually all agreed that they could be better. Then when you ask them, do you know how are you, what's your plan for getting better? Then actually, it's not so clear. They are, maybe you could even say they're a little bit confused about what to do. Then you ask them, have you tried? And they all say, yes, we have tried. Harder prioritization, new agile codes, and what do I know? There's always a lot of things. But they are still not happy. Anyone who recognizes this pattern or have tried some of the same questions?
Just picking up on one of your points, though, you said within an agile environment or within any environment?
No, in general. Normally these people are somehow not so much into the agile things.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
But they still think of it like this.
Yeah.
So you can say this is in a way above and beyond agile for most people.
Yeah, and there's plenty of resources and research and portfolio management by the likes of PMI and OGC and those sorts of people.
Yeah, it has actually all confirmed that this is something we can get better at.
Mm-hmm.
And then they sell a billion courses. So the thing about portfolio management is that it's actually this kind of thing is that if you don't do it well, it will bite you in different ways in other places. So the phenomena is that you cannot really compensate in a local context for a bad job on portfolio management. And on the other hand, if you do it well, then everything will go better. So it plays a bit on what Goldratt, the guy with theory of constraint, calls inherent simplicity. And the point is not deeper than this, but quite simply put, if you do portfolio management well, probably other things will be easier. You also agree on this?
Totally.
So you can even build the argument that... Oh,
sorry. Is it okay to ask you to switch to that other mic? Because there's some echo. I don't know if it's only me.
I can do that, or I can maybe move this one. Thank you for... Better?
Yeah.
Okay. Just let us know because it's awful if the mic is not working.
You can always use the handheld in case.
Mike Jagger. We always call it Beyonce style or Mike Jagger style. I prefer Beyonce. So just a little bit about me. So actually all I wanted to tell is that in what I've been doing, I help big companies do big things. So I'm not even a real agile coach, but I've been doing what I would call operational development, operational excellence, getting stuff done, facilitating various things in large organizations. So this is what I planned for you. And again, I emphasize, scale data framework, I only take this because it's the best known model. There's no other connection. So we'll have a quick look at that. Then a bit about what happens when complexity dominates, how that changes things, and then we will take it from there. So please stop me if it's too fast. This is a one-pager on SAFe lean portfolio management. I actually wanted to ask you what is it optimized for, but now I gave it away. So it's optimized for flow. It's a very important thing in that framework. So when you look at it, it really says portfolio flow, and you have sort of the elements of a Kanban, which I will show in a second. But there's one thing which is very interesting with this. There's something missing from this picture. I can ask you that instead. So when we talk portfolio management, other than the budget, which is here everywhere in many weird forms like participatory budgeting and other things. But there's one big thing missing. What is that? 1, 2, 3. The strategy.
Yeah.
Isn't that kind of interesting? Strategy has never really been part of Agile. So again, I invite you to disagree. But it's something I just think is possible. Yeah, of course, we talk about it. Yes, of course, we can facilitate a strategy session. But seriously, it's never stay in your state of confusion. It's called think slow. Okay? And then when you're ready to act, you can do that fast. But don't rush into action. Allow yourself to be confused. Then there's a few ways of describing this, but basically what you know as causality works on the right-hand side. So on the clear and the complicated, we call this the ordered world. Then you have two other worlds. You have the complex world and the chaotic world. The chaotic world is a mess. It's not permanent, it's temporary. So everybody has been in a state of chaos, but normally it doesn't last long. Hopefully you're not there right now. But it can happen any moment. The fire alarm could go off, or somebody could have an exploding bottle in the back, or what do I know? So it comes out of the blue. Complexity is something different. It's environmental. It's like gravity. It's often explained. So you can never actually get rid of it. It's more a matter of how much does it influence you. So rather than causality, something implies something else, and you can logically conclude something. In complexity, you have dispositionality, which is history matter, but you cannot count on it. So things can be surprising. You think of it as hidden variables. Do any of you have a good example of something complex?
Your brain? Is your brain complex? Or is it complicated?
Well, that's what I'm actually not sure.
That's a chaotic.
Look, your brain. Speaking from personal experience.
But a good sign of complexity is when trusted behaviors leads to random actions. So I have an example, and I can risk sharing that with you if you promise to not kick me out already now. But it's not uncommon, like if you're in a relationship and you have a spouse and you're walking home from work late Friday, a little bit too late because you had one beer too many at the bar. And then you pass the flower shop and they sell these wonderful flowers. So it's, why don't I bring home flowers? So maybe the other person forgets about the beer. So you bring home those flowers and surprisingly, they are received well. Good person. Next Friday, you do the same thing. Good person. Some Fridays later, You can see where this is going back.
He's cheating on me.
Who do you think I am? I mean, why do you keep bringing me flowers?
Yeah.
What's going on? That's complexity, right? Hidden variables. Very, very banal example. But actually, complexity is in that sense everywhere. So it's when something surprising happened that you couldn't reasonably count on. COVID is a good example in recent history. So more and more, that's actually what people feel, is that things keep happening around them, and they all the time need to do new things. So anyway, back to the simplicity. So on the audit side here, we have my friend Pelle the elephant, who really loves hard days work, reliable, strong, can have bad days, really like structure, hates surprises. And I think actually most people I know are a little bit like this. It's good to get a good job done. But then when you go to the other side, the untamable is often described by a hippo. Her name is Wilma. And that's the type of person who always wrecks the party and eats all the candy and other things which are highly unpredictable, except for eating all the candy. The rest is unpredictable, which is more what we might be facing. So something wild, untameable, and sooner or later things becomes a mess. That's the super lightweight version of complexity. Anyone would like to add just one thing or challenge me on something I said? But if you have not come across this framework, I really would recommend you to look it up. There's a book written a few years ago called the Cynefin birthday book. It's not the name. But different people wanted to surprise Dave Snowden with stories on how they're using it. So there's a lot of stories to pick up from there. It's one of the best introductions I know. And please call it Cynefin.
Thank you.
Not Cynefin. Sorry, it was actually a mistake. I looked at you. But
No,
you got it.
I was the one that made it.
Exactly. Maybe we had a connection there. So it's actually changing the conditions for what we do. So I had a bit of fun just drawing it out like this, that the best is like a clear view from the mountain, blue sky, you can see miles away, nothing is unclear. Then you can have the curvy landscape. You can still trust the map, but you never really know what's around the corner. Then you have the Volkswagen buggy. What's the English name of this thing? Combi. Okay. Anyway, you're going towards the beach and you're not really sure what's the sand, what's the road, and where's the water. And then you have the more chaotic situation where suddenly you're submerged and all that matters is to get out again. And then you have the confusion. And more, we are probably in this domain rather than that domain. But most plans and business cases are all here. Okay, so far?
Yes.
Actually, I'm not really expecting I'm saying something you don't know, but maybe I'm putting the pieces in a little bit different way. So then, what is this thing, portfolio management? And I call it collaboratively lean portfolio management. So the what? So for me, the portfolio is everything we do. It's all the people, all the money. It's basically everything. Or if you look at it financially, a portfolio is a risk position. It's so many shares of this kind, so much cash in your account, whatever. That's your portfolio. Then the lean aspect is about minimizing wasted opportunity. So classical lean, in a certain reading, is minimizing waste. For me, this is about minimizing wasted opportunity. You just don't want to see opportunity go down the drain. Then the collaborative part, it basically means everybody together. So everybody is invited, included. Nobody is excluded. It's got to be open. It's a longer story. And then it's got to be healthy. So some of you probably heard about WIP constraints. So for sure, there cannot be too much load. The cost is got to be reasonable, and whatever risk you take on, it's got to be balanced, like a healthy risk appetite, as you would call it. And interestingly, most people know what that is, and most people in larger organizations think that whatever they are in is not healthy at the moment. There's just too much stuff going on. So the overload is probably one of the biggest classical problems you have in larger organizations.
I find the use of the word opportunity there a bit curious. The word I would have thought you would have wanted to put in there would be capacity.
So here,
Yeah.
but you can say it's capacity is part of opportunity.
Capacity is what you have. Opportunities are out there for you to seize them and apply your capacity towards.
Okay.
Maybe I'm getting disconnected.
No, it's fine. Maybe if you can expand on your point. So I really mean opportunity, in the sense that it's something that comes to you like serendipity, right? It's something new that you've got to say no to, maybe because you don't have the capacity.
Exactly. There's many
So of course they are
opportunities.
connected.
There's many opportunities. The challenge is
Yes.
to
Yeah.
find the best ROI and allocate your capacity towards it.
Yeah.
Sorry, a little bit of time, but how I understand what you're saying there is when you're doing lean portfolio management well, you're not being the person that just made the plan 2 years ago and is continuing blinders on because that's what we planned. We're able to notice new opportunities coming in a lean way so that in order to make capacity for new ideas, we can pivot on existing things that are in flight or whatever. That's how I interpreted what you said there.
Yeah, exactly. And actually interesting, this is built into the scale design framework. If you remember, you had the strategic themes and the epics. An epic is an initiative. And the explanation for how long do you run an initiative is until you have something better to do. So the ending point is not definition of done. It's like, now it's not fun anymore, I would rather do something else. So it's a little bit overlooked, but that's exactly what we're talking about. You do this until it's not economically fun anymore, then you switch. And the ability to switch is what gives you the agility. Then on the how, so the approach really is about accountable contribution. So you think about a portfolio of risk positions, there's got to be accountability for each of those positions. It can be on persons or collectively, but it's got to be accountable. And the objective is to manage at a speed where you can afford to lose. So that means that you can basically always afford to step out of a position and go on to another position. That's my definition of portfolio management. So if you remember the version I compared to, the benchmark version is optimized for flow. This one is optimized for always being able to change your mind. We talked about surprises. These are different types of surprises, and I don't think there's anything missing. So this is what surprises look like. I don't know if you have seen something similar before, but we always talk about like disruption and whatever, which is literally surprises. And they can have 3 different forms. They can overlap, so it's not important is it one or the other, but it's more like, could we get to know these better? So serendipity is actually this should have been green, like a green rabbit. It's something you see in the corner. There's like this little rabbit jumping over there, but you're busy. You say, go away, rabbit, we don't have time to deal with you. Or the more curious person will say, oh, wow, what's that? Maybe we can use this for something. Let's investigate and be curious about it. So serendipity. Then there are the bubbles. So if any of you are into children's stories, fairy tales, Hans Christian Andersen, The Emperor's New Clothes. Have you heard about it? So there's this guy walking naked in the street thinking he's dressed wonderful. And then suddenly he realizes he has no clothes on. That's a bubble that burst. Right? Suddenly the truth becomes known and there's no hiding for it. Anyone who has a good example of a bubble? In Boston, they had something called the Big Dick. Right? That's a bit of a bubble. It's something that just keeps growing and you cannot get out of it.
Oh, in Boston, yeah. I was in crosstown. There's a transit project across the city been on for who knows how many years and they have no end.
Well, it's one kind of a bubble, of course, but the bubble is also something which you are unconscious about, that you're not aware that you're in an unfavorable position, but then suddenly you get a new piece of information and it just bursts on you.
Well, so we've had the pain, I've had the pain of waterfall projects that were supposed to be 1 year, this much money, and then 10 years later, it's still ongoing because they've never actually implemented it because it's a big bang. So big bang delivery, it's never getting done, is a bubble you're just in too deep and you can't stop because you've already spent all that money, it's sunk cost.
Yeah, exactly. Bubbles can also be good. So anytime you decide to prioritize A versus B, then actually you build a bit of a bubble for yourself. So prioritization is deliberately building a bubble, but sometimes it can get too big and unfavorable. And then there is the flash in the middle, which is something like a sudden change. Weather changes are typically what you can use as an example.
Brexit in the UK.
Blockbuster.
That's a bubble that burst, I would say.
Yes.
But it was a sudden shift as well afterwards.
Was it that sudden?
Well, COVID is...
COVID
But it doesn't really matter what it is, actually. It matters that you see the surprise and then you can discuss what it is later. So for the purpose of this, it's fun to see, okay, it can be one of those. Actually, it can be more than one. So it can be a fun beer conversation, but it still doesn't change practice.
So is that retrospective coherence that you're actually describing? So you're in the situation, it's revealed to you, you've got new information. It's like a black swan event. All of a sudden you have retrospective coherence. You understand, oh, of course this would happen now that I understand this information at this point in time. But earlier I couldn't have.
Yeah, so you're onto something. I think the nature of a surprise is that it happens now. You cannot be surprised tomorrow. Well, parents can, right? If they know the kids have bought something and they have a birthday tomorrow, they are very surprised. But that's the only exception I know to the rule of surprises. So you cannot be surprised out of the moment, right? It really is a real surprise. The impact can be both in the past and the future. So you can be surprised today about something that has a 30-year impact. People tend to confuse that. So of course you need to do long-term planning, but you can still learn something new today that makes you change your position. Anyone who can think of something that is not here? I mean, do we have a fourth category of surprises?
Maybe. But it might fall under, like you said earlier, from a bubble or a sudden shift or something like that. Can't think of the name of the chap. He's a Canadian professor who... No, Mintzberg. Henry Mintzberg.
Yeah.
So you have, on the one hand, you have strategy that is planned and thought through, and then you go ahead and execute it. Mintzberg says no, strategy emerges through events. And the big case study that was from the 1950s is Pilkington glass, where they make glass as they would normally make glass, which is like a semi-solid structure. But then they found that they could make plate glass. And through making the plate glass, they realized actually we can make more money from patenting this out, licensing it. So for many years, I don't know if it's still the case, Pilkington get the rights for every piece of glass that's ever made in that way. So that was a shift or maybe a new opportunity that they found and completely changed the strategy based on what emerged.
Yes, yeah, that would be an act of retrospective coherence to understand exactly what happened, but it might play out quite randomly, which would be a sign of emergence. Which would be like the emergent.
Yeah.
It happens, and then later you understand how clever it was.
What about organizational surprise? Large organizations have a level of complexity and unknowability for any particular individual or team, and people are often caught unawares that work that they're doing is being duplicated somewhere else in the organization, or they're being undermined because of some other conflicting initiative, so forth. So would that fall under one of these headings, or is that something different?
I think that's a little bit different. Actually, I'm coming to that, so if it's okay, we can take it.
Sure.
Just remind me. You will see when we get there.
Okay.
So portfolio management, classically, is about strategy execution. So you have this aligning strategy with execution, but I actually believe that now it's not about aligning something static to something allostatic. It's a dynamic that's reconciled by the vision to stay aligned. You cannot allow these two things to come away. So it becomes like a fluidity, as some people talk about a dance, which you could say a dance between intent and contribution, or the aspiration and the theory for how to achieve that aspiration that we talked about. So as things are emerging, the word was already there, you align, not to be aligned, but actually to be able to realign. You can only change your mind if you have a point of view, so to say. So that becomes almost a bit of a dynamic paradox, is that you want to be aligned on your position so that you can quickly change that position. So you're not having that position to have it, you're having it so that you can respond fast when something is happening. A paradox. Now we're getting into the complexity thing. So I decided to take you through it this way. I was looking at portfolio management. You can even say strategy. I think, what are the most fundamental questions around that? And this is what I came up with. And I'll show them all instead of doing the animation. So maybe you can think of one that's wrong or one that's missing. But I think these 8 questions are quite well defined, a complete set of questions you like to address. So the first one is, are we doing the right thing? The second thing is the capacity question. Do we have the muscles to lift this work we have taken on? Do we have the right balance of activities? Are we doing the right things with the capacity we have? When we look at this over time, do we see the things that we want to see come back? I mean, do the contributions match the intents that we're having? Is this healthy? Load spend risk, we talked about this a bit earlier. And then comes the dynamic steering questions. Have we learned something that is somehow challenging our view? And based on that, should we change our position? Should we really change people or money or something else from one thing to another? And the last question is, can you sleep at night? Or is there something nagging you? If there's something that's nagging you, it can also happen in the daytime. It's a good sign that you have to go back and check what is your situation. Does this make sense?
Except for 8. In my case, but that's a personal problem.
But there are other reasons you can lose sleep, of course. It's a figurative speak.
Yeah.
I love number 6 because it's like the people that say do a pre-mortem, what might go wrong. Like, so when you're talking about these strategies, how do we know? How will we know we've got the right bet? How will we know that the teams are healthy? And the whole word, can we sense? It's come from the fact that organizations are complex living systems. And so the organization and the people in it, as a collaborative portfolio management, should be able to sense those signals.
Yes.
Love it.
Yeah. Exactly. So I get around a lot these days because I'm on long-term vacation, and I do this because I think it's fun. And there was one thing I heard that really puzzled me. So other than the frequent changes that trouble, especially senior managers, that people like us, the one thing I heard that is most troubling is the upward management. So if we learn something important and we want to tell it upwards in the system, it's really, really difficult to get the bandwidth to be heard, which is actually what this is addressing. It means that you need to establish some means of communication where important information is invited and doesn't need to be forced, and will probably not be listened to. So it's a big aspect. So this is breaking down the portfolio conversation. Complexity talks about decompose and recombine. This was the decomposition. Dave Snowden doesn't like what I'm doing, but for me it was still fun and it's useful, so I kept doing it.
So I have a question. Maybe you said it, but I'm not sure. I missed it. Why are 6 and 7 different color?
It's because that's where you actually change something.
Oh.
This is just like 8, 1, 2, is blah, 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 blah. Here you actually do something. Maybe it's an overemphasis, but that's...
No.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
So that's what I thought. This is where you take some stuff from A and put it on B. Then there's this one. This is like an organization, silo on silo, layer on layer. I guess some of you have been in one of those. And then the circle is the whole strategy conversation, of the whole portfolio conversation. And then you can go around in levels and silos and layers and rules and see, okay, what little piece of this are they talking about here? So it's pretty fragmented, and they talk about it in many places. And when they talk about it, they also quite often talk about what they talk about in the other groups, right? That's actually most of the time. What are the other guys talking about? So I got this idea, what if you go around with a basket and pick up these little, where are we heading? I'm happy about that. So that's the clarity of intent. So that's a constant reconciliation of direction and position. Then there's build fitness, or fitness for purpose. It basically means, are we constantly making sure that the team we are is up to the game? And I don't know how many times I've been in an organization where if you had been a football team, asking the question, can our goalkeeper actually catch a ball, is something you cannot ask. It's just out of scope. You cannot discuss if a tester can test, or a product manager can product management, or a goalkeeper can catch a ball. But I think those conversations are important. Maybe the ball goes from round to square and there is a point. So there shouldn't basically be anything you couldn't discuss related to your own composition and ability to implement the vision you have taken on. These two are a bit off-cycle. Then the last one, aligning contributions, is about what we talked about. It's like the dance, the intent versus the contribution, the conversation, the PI plan, the QBR, etc. So if you can make these working well with this composed conversation we had from the other slide, then I think you're in a pretty good place. So that's actually how the logic go. Just put it out. So defragment, decompose, reconfigure, recombine, breaking down the questions, picking up the pieces, putting them together in a new way.
I have a bit of observation. These 4 slides compared to what you showed the 4 slides before that. I feel like those two are at odds in that in the first 4 you were talking about complexity, and this seems like you're more talking at the complicated realm, where you're sort of saying, look, these are the things we can do, and there's a known behavior, and so there'll be known outcomes. Whereas behind some of these, especially the reconfigure, I feel like there's a lot of complexity that sort of gets hidden. Even things just like motivations between teams to not allow things to happen for other teams. Like, that all disappears. We see that in fair planning all the time. I won't contribute, I won't engage to the detriment of that team.
Okay.
And then a quarter later, haha.
So I think there is a thing, I have started to call this toxic behavior, which is foul play. I think we all know what it is. So if you're in a place where you accept toxic behavior, it will be very difficult to do some of this. And the story is not over yet, so I agree with you. Let me see. I think it's coming a bit later. So it's very important, for example, to have the principle of inclusion and transparency. So what is transparency? Well, transparency is that you accept challenge on your choices. So you've got to make those public, right? You say, we have made an important decision, we do this, which is not, if you do your business, I will do my business. That's not what it is, right? That's toxic. It is an invitation to challenge if you have better information. So some of those things will be really important, because I know exactly what you mean. So the thing that you talk about would be part of this conversation. Are we actually playing well? Do we have a useful way of working together, or do we have some weird rigged game where nobody really help each other, where the goalkeeper has an extra ball and he's putting it into the goal when the striker is in the other end? Weird stuff like that.
Start with hands-on.
Because actually, I think it's a fair point, for example, that toxicity is written into the rule book, right? So you cannot just take it out. That's how people build careers.
How do I say this without everybody hating me?
Don't worry, we hate you already.
Just go for it.
More.
North of the border, we don't have a problem with toxicity. North of the problem we have of the border, we have a problem with extra politeness in business, where we won't actually say what's the problem.
Yeah.
That's the exact opposite.
Yeah, passive aggressive.
Yeah, and then we got home thinking, why do I have to do it? Not like my life.
Is that the Canadian way?
Yes.
No, to be nice, to be nice, right?
Yeah, sorry.
Lovely, that's what
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. No, sorry.
So just super simple, it's like a question of whether you're suppressing the truth or whether you're just not telling.
Yeah, like, I might hurt somebody by saying this, so once.
Yeah. Like if you have a goalkeeper that can't catch the ball, it's very painful when you say it.
Who asked the question?
Exactly.
Yeah, the person asking the question feels bad.
But I think it's a fair one that it's a long way to go. This is not the first time I hear it. I've also personally lost jobs because of this. So one thing that's super important is that you have sponsorship from whoever is on top of all of those portfolios you work with. If you work from a part position, then it's a bit like a game of head and tail. Sooner or later, the other side comes up and you're out. So you need a coin with two heads, basically, which is what you get with sponsorship.
And you're still called a joker.
So,
Sorry, that was dark.
well, accidents can still happen. So I think for me, this is actually two things. So it's frustration that Agile doesn't work. It really doesn't. It's fun, but it doesn't do what we wanted it to do. And the second thing is that there is something changing in society. I mean, changes are just coming faster. Implications are getting bigger. Frustrations are increasing. I mean, companies have difficulties keeping people. So there's something going on. At least that's what I'm sensing. Then the question is, what can you do about it? And of course, there's many things. I mean, no change basically happens without permission. I think it's very clear for what I'm talking about. You need to have very high level permission. There can be no, is it called dissent? Like there can be no opposing view in another part of the company. If you want to do something like that, it's got to be one team. But if you're not one team, then maybe you're not one portfolio either. At least that would be a really pretty weird setup. But thank you for the challenge.
Is it also true about complexity that if you're in the complex system, it's hard to see that you're in it?
Well, so complexity is everywhere. So the thing I shared, Cynefin framework, it's not, you're not simple or complex or chaos. It's an aspect. There's always a little bit of chaos. So for example, any surprise puts you into like a micro state of chaos, right? You don't really know what to do, and you're, oh wow, it was just the neighbor's cat and everything is okay again. But it's still like a little mini chaos. Maybe it takes longer, but for sure it doesn't last forever. So it's a way of understanding what you're dealing with. And I think the big proposition is that most classical project management, including the scaled agile framework, are just having a heavy foot on the audit side of the world. I mean, as soon as you hear someone talk about a business case, you know where they are. And then they say, well, but this is pretty complex. I say, well, you cannot unsay what you just said. Anyway, I hope it has been just a little bit helpful. I wanted to show you how you can then start doing this. So when it comes to the clarity of intent, it's a rather interesting exercise to try to express that as OKRs. I did that a few times once with a larger company. How many strategies do you think they got? I worked with the head of strategy. He went around and said, strategies, please give me your strategy. So he came back with 7 strategies. And then we started the process of translating those into like a handful of OKRs. What do you think the first thing they discovered was? Nobody had any idea what the strategy said. They had to think again so that we could do this. But he actually managed to translate in what he thought was a useful way those 7 strategies into a number of rather, those OKRs were not little fish, they were like heavy whales, but he did it. And he used that as a way to bring steer. And many people have said many things about OKRs. I still like the original book by John Doerr. I think that's wonderfully simple. It has a good storytelling around it. When it starts to be complicated, and it's important if you do this or that, normally it's too complicated. Go one step too far. Really fun exercise. Then there's the build fitness exercise. This is a fun one. So I'm asking a team, can you work together? Do you have like a useful collaborative structure? I'm not sure it's like school grade English, but they normally get, can the goalkeeper actually catch the ball? It's what we talk about. And then there's spinning them around and say, okay, so what does that mean? And put some criteria up on how are you doing against your own criteria. And I have never experienced doing this in a friendly setting. I wouldn't say that it was without toxicity, but still in a friendly setting that the team didn't come up with something that they actually needed to talk about. It's just something that, why didn't we talk about that earlier? And of course, this is just the beginning. And then the last one, most people working in Agile know this pretty well. That's like the big room thing where you invite everybody to talk about their work. The mechanism is actually quite simple. It's playing on emergence, meaning that instead of telling people what the strategy is, you ask them, what does strategy look like for you? Then you can take the sum of that and say, well, maybe this is what strategy looks like for us. Is that the one we want to have or not? So in that way you can build emergence into the equation. And I have never experienced this to not be a sensible conversation. If any of you ever did the PI planning thing, then there's one thing that puzzled me, is that senior leaders who participate quite often say, oh wow, this is the best overview I ever had of what we're doing. Have you tried that? Like at the end of those days, they're like, yes, now we know what's going on. So it's really the transparency and the alignment that they invest in, not that planning thing that nobody wants to do. These are quite simple things to do, so they can get you started. So it goes a bit like this. Make sure you have air cover. Find a good facilitator. Make sure you have a useful collaborative structure. Accountability is the most important thing here. Start making things visible. Make the first alignment talks. And actually, I have experienced that already when you do this in large organizations. It's not unusual for big work items to suddenly disappear. I mean, I have witnessed a CEO cancel 25% worth of his annual load when he heard about an activity. So some years ago, he literally said, you idiots, we have agreed not to do anything for this customer. And it turned out that they had a big feature cooking because this customer had asked for it and there were no other reason. I mean, there were other reasons, right? But really there were no other reason. So as soon as he saw that, and he reminded what had been agreed, that freed up 25% of capacity. I'm sure you have similar stories. So a lot of trimming in the beginning, then clarity of intent, fitness or building fitness, and going around. So when you do this, it also means that there are other things you don't need to do, which becomes quite apparent. So especially something like status reports, status meetings,
Steering committee.
alignment meetings, steering committees, all of that can be rethought. So the game is the dance with the portfolio management. Fast, but not faster than you can still have the steer. All the time rethinking your position. Are we really doing what we want? And in that sense, that's how you create room for those surprises, because you can always change your position, which is basically the agile idea. You invest in an epic until it's not fun anymore and do something else. So retaining the opportunity to do that switch is what it's all about. This is where I wanted to invite you to have a conversation. I always joke that if you raise your hand and talk, then that's the death penalty. And then, as I said it, I realized that maybe that was not so good. But then later over beer, one said, "I really like when you use this tough language." Makes a point. I considered myself lucky, so I try to moderate it a bit. So it's a very tough punishment, of course, but still friendly. And it's relatively easy to estimate how much is left when it's all gone, right? How much capacity do you have left for surprises? Maybe that was a leading question. I didn't mean it like that. How do you deal with surprises?
Well, interesting. We were having this conversation, and I think it's about experimenting and having that clear. Thank you for sharing that. And then having that well established up front that we experiment, and regardless what happened, the learning is the learning. There is a capital being gained from that. So capitalizing on the learning through experimentation allows us to have enough room for surprises. Oh yeah, okay, good. We learned something new. That's a surprise. Oh, we learned something. Yeah, we learned something. That's translate that in that.
So the experiment itself is not a surprise, right? That's something that's known information.
Yeah.
But it leads to more surprises.
We talked about the fact that we have this annual budget planning, that they plan ahead because they think it's a nice mountain they can see ahead in the future, and they sort of then say that's our plan. And so that we can deal with surprises is that, some new luck hunting comes in halfway through the year, and suddenly magically there's more money to spend that. So nothing gets stopped. It just gets more money to do that thing. So that's how I find the company that we work for does deal with surprises. It's a magic money pot. I don't know where it was when I wanted to raise,
So I guess when you work for a financial institution,
Yeah, it's like
you actually
we can
create fun.
do it wrong.
Just write that. That's it.
One of the most powerful things you can do is actually retroactive cost review. So you, for example, look at a month's spent, where is time and money going, and ask yourself, is this really who we want to be? It's way more powerful than tickle-tackle forecasting on what you might need a year from now. And I see very few people do it. We started to talk about it as healthy spend, that you basically look, for example, run the business, grow the business, or you look at a horizon view, where is time and money landing, and is that what you want to do?
I give you my wife's phone number and just say the same thing to her.
I'm thinking about your household. It's actually my favorite example. It's a bit like in the family, right? You go to your favorite store, and everybody just grabs whatever they want for a month. But after that month, you look at how you spend the money, and you ask yourself, who do you want to be? I can guarantee you, in my case, there would be too much red meat and red wine. And there would be no way I could spend all the money I transferred to more sensible things on vegetables, right? So I could maybe invest a little or something like that. So you got it. But you got to take that conversation yourself. So that's the goalkeeper again, right? But it's interesting. So I would actually challenge you, there might be ways of opening up that conversation. You probably need to speak with a more clever coach than me, but the word possible is in the word impossible.
Wow.
Anything else? I got that from a cheap movie.
Possible too. I am possible.
Oh, that's even slicker. Look at you.
Well, no, that's from another guy. Forgot the name. I'm not the inventor.
Your email signatures must be amazing.
It's a pretty deep experience. I am the lion.
Yeah.
Any other kinds? So I will I appreciate the lighthearted spirit. I will try to round this off with some style still. It's not going to take long. So this is basically the dance as I can describe it. One of the most powerful things I have is this: manage at the speed you can afford to lose, which basically means don't take any more risks than you can actually manage, which means that you should be able to, at any given time, to stop what you're doing and start doing something else as a principle. If the strategy doesn't work, don't try to make it work. Just change it to something that works. The important thing is the alignment, that you're doing the same thing across. That gives bigger dents in the universe, as Steve Jobs would have said. Today I see this as a game and something I call implied strategy, which is pretty cool. It comes from financial trading. You can talk about implied interest. That's where should the interest be? And depending on whether it is or not, you can keep or sell or buy, whatever those guys are doing. In strategy, it's actually a reconciliation of point of view. A lot of people tell me it's like art of action, but it really isn't. It's a different point of view, even if you can still see some gaps here. Wish aspiration, that's the written strategy, the one with the laminated version. Reality is what you're doing, what you're exploring, what you're experimenting, what you're learning from that. And surprises are the surprises. So it's a bit like strategy, execution, life. What's the best we can do? My favorite example these days is from Walmart. I picked it up from a business professor who wrote about it on LinkedIn. That's where I get my surprising information. Would you buy Walmart stock? I know it's a US company. I don't even know if it's in Canada.
I love Walmart stuff.
Yeah. So the thing with Walmart is that they were a little bit the underdogs to companies like Amazon. And people would say, like brick and mortar, forget about it. Even if Amazon actually probably went that way with gold. Isn't it called gold food?
Yeah, both.
Anyway, what Walmart did was that they bought an online company called Get2.com. So now you can order online at Walmart. Is Walmart taking it home for you? No. They say, please come to Walmart and pick up your stuff. No. So they actually found a way to go online and reinforce brick and mortar. And at the moment, at least, as I was reading this case study, share the link if you're interested, they are recognized as one of the few companies who are really competing with Amazon in the supermarket space.
Costco is not one. Costco. I don't know.
I only know this case. So it's I only want to talk about this.
Costco just never went
So this is
online.
an example. This is an example of implied strategy, which actually plays with something that's called abduction reasoning, the logic of hunches, as Dave Snowden started to explain about it. But the theory of abduction is as old as mathematics. It's a way of reasoning where you get a hunch and you validate the solidity of that hunch for other measures. You basically test it. Or you can say it's about finding the adjacent possible. I mean, you are here, but maybe there's something completely unknown to you just here. When you pick up an online store and having people pick up the stuff in all the places you are anyway. Like little things that can make a huge difference if you get it right. So that's why it's so important to all the time reconsider your play this right. It's a quite cool example. I'm collecting these at the moment. A lot of people don't really like this term, but I'm still trying. So that's basically it. At the moment, I'm having fun typing this up. And I'm not really good at taking money, so it's probably going to be free. But if you're interested, happy to share the early drafts. And what I'm playing with is how you can hack your strategy out of jail. How can you make some hacks? We talked about some of it, but there are some more. So what are the things you can do to bring the strategy more into what you're doing? Because it's actually the strategy that informs the portfolio. It guides the work you do and the money you spend and make that good work.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thanks.